My project at the center focuses on trying to figure out what caused this ideological shift in the mid-20th century, modern globalization, the American leadership in the world. In the wake of the Second World War, the United States became the leading proponent of international trade liberalization, spreading free trade to the world. And yet for 100 years before this, it was a protectionist country, highly insular. And so my work tries to explore and finds the answer to this question in the mid to late 19th century through my study of the American free trade movement. It was this slow and steady work of a group of free traders in the United States that were a minority that increasingly became a majority. It was also has something to do with the fact that the United States increasingly became a very powerful manufacturing base. And the more powerful its manufacturers became, the more it wanted to access foreign markets. So there's an ideological side to it. There's also a very material side to it. Well, there was a lot of influence, real and perceived, within the free trade movement in America. They had a lot of ties to the British free traders, who in the mid to late 19th century were the free trade leaders of the world. And this connection, real and perceived, was also viewed by American protectionists to be a conspiracy. And as this free trade movement developed, the ties between the United States and England also became closer. And so that's something I also look at. He's very much a forgotten figure in American history. But in British history, he is the one that brings free trade to England. And it's his ideology, this idea that free trade will bring world peace, becomes extremely popular. It becomes the ideology of Britain for about 100 years. And it's this ideology that also takes root in the United States. And so it's these followers of Cobdenism, is what it was called back then, this free trade ideology in America that become the foundation, the driving force behind the free trade movement in America for the next 100 years, culminating in ultimate success in the 1940s with the American shift to free trade. Well, I think even today you'll find these true believers, even if they don't know that it's coming from Cobden, you'll see it in the Thomas Friedmans, these hardcore proponents of globalization at any cost. And you'll find it even in peace studies. I think you've always found a strain, even more so in the late 19th century, of people who were much more realistic. The realist versus idealist, so to speak. And those were the protectionists. I mean, these guys believe that it's a war. We're always going to be at war, either through military conquest or through trade. And protectionism was seen as a good defense against war. Mark Twain is credited with saying one of my favorite lines, and it's, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And you see this today with the mounting protests against the American-led free trade liberalization of today. So I think there's historical lessons to be learned from this when the roles are switched. You have Americans essentially as the main critics of British-led globalization in the late 19th century, and studying this shift and studying the growth of free trade ideology in America, and how they overcame these obstacles, these protectionist outcries, is a lesson for, I guess, future policymakers of the world who are going to be facing increasing opposition as well. Well, I think that there has to be a balance that's struck. One of the problems to me, it seems, is that the most hardcore proponents of free trade now, at least in the United States, have lost the moral grounding that was in the 19th century. In the 19th century, the free traders were the harshest critics of imperialism, of war. They were the leading anti-imperialists. And it was all grounded in their economic belief that free trade brought world peace. And it's very tough to find this moral grounding with the free trade proponents of today. And I think that if we can get that back, that it would be more enticing to more and more people, and it could lead to a resurgence of this idea that the more interconnected the world is, the safer we'll become. Well, the center has some of the best scholars and commentators on American foreign policy in the world, and so my own research has gained immensely from throwing ideas off of them and sharing my work with them.